larger topics, the need for open standards and what does it mean to work with open standards, what are the benefits. Then I'll look a bit at the open document format, ODF, not going too much into detail because right after my talk I understand there is a larger presentation on open document format and you will hear more about it in the next 2 days, but showing it as an example for a bigger change and why we believe open document format is relevant and important for the marketplace. Then talking about open standards as facilitators for innovation, business and optimization. And finally ending up with an open computing paradigm, what we see as the central paradigm for businesses to operate in the future and now on. So to start with the need for open standards, what is an open standard? An open standard is being developed and maintained by independent people from multiple organizations in an independent group. Normally a standards organization, a standards body. You may know OASIS, you may know W3C, you may know the IETF. What's very important is control. No one single product provider should be able to dictate the standard, to set the processes, to control it, to make the rules so that the standard complies with his or their products. An open standard is freely available and an open standard should be implementable and usable by those creating open source software. If you look at a certain set of criteria, you can move them all into open. That would be the best ideal situation. There is certainly always a little span, a little window where they can merge, but the ideal situation at the bottom is you have development in an open organization with everybody to participate. Maintenance, there needs to be a clear maintenance process, errata handling, and further maintenance, further development of the standard. Acquisition. The standard needs to be freely available for everybody. It needs to be implementable. As far as implementation is concerned, it needs to show, a good standard needs to show that it can be implemented by multiple vendors, by multiple technology users, and needs to be able to be modified. Now very often there is some confusion between open standards and open source, especially by people who are not really active in software development. The both are closely linked, but they are certainly not the same. A standard is something like a blueprint. It tells you what you need to do to actually get around to building something, to building software. An open standard, as I mentioned already before, is one that is being developed and maintained in a particularly transparent way. Free for anybody to participate who is interested, who wants to participate, who wants to bring in their technologies. Open source is actual code. It's concrete software, as most of you probably know. I'm preaching to the converted here. And open source is built and maintained in a particular transparent way with community involvement and is freely available. Now if we look at the effect of open standards, standardization in general drives software interoperability and interchangeability, and I will dig into this a bit more in detail later on. It breaks the old-style dependence in software on proprietary methods, on trade secrets, on single providers. It builds a strong foundation on which others can quickly build and innovate. And this all leads to an increased competition. Open standards enable new players to get on the market, to use a standard, build competitive products, get on the market and offer them. And this is what happens with the open source community most clearly. And of course standardization is scary. It's scary to those who cannot act in such an environment, in such an open environment, who are building sort of in a single vendor building block with single vendor lock-in, and who do not want to compete in such an open way. So open standards are about interoperability, about innovation, about collaboration, and about flexibility. And now let me move on to the open document format example. The open document format is a standard for document formats that was being developed in OASIS and then brought into ISO and became an ISO standard with unanimous approval. The entire process took about 4 years. It was a very open process, as it is always done in OASIS. Everybody who wanted to could contribute. The open document format is implemented by multiple vendors today. And here I just list some of them: OpenOffice, StarOffice, KOffice. We in IBM have an implementation. It's called Lotus Symphony. It's in Lotus Domino in IBM Workplace. So it shows that the standard can be implemented by multiple vendors. Several policies have taken up and adopted the open document format in several countries in Africa, South America, Asia, Europe, and in several states in the US. There is an ODF alliance in order to promote the open document format, and I give you the webpage here, www.odfalliance.org. And further development of the open document format is being carried out at the moment. ODF 1.1 had been approved by OASIS, and 1.2 is in the committee right now. Now, what is so interesting about open document format? Why do we need it? We should compare about old style and new style, if you like. The old style was you had some information and it was closely linked to the application that created it. The control of the information was, if you like, with the software developer and not with the customer. If you had developed your document, you needed the specific application in order to read the content again. The new style is different. You create information, but the information is being represented using a real open standard. And it's not under the control of a single vendor, and even more importantly, multiple applications can create, access it, modify it interchangeably. So the nice thing is, if I create an open document format document with one application, send it to somebody else who uses a different application because he prefers the look and feel of this different application, he can just read it, the same document. You're not forced to have one particular application to look at it. So the control here is with the customer and not with a software provider. And what you as a customer see on the application level is also true for the entire content. It is an open standard, so the content, it's XML based, can be read out by different kinds of applications very easily. You can connect it. What we started to see in the 1990s was that with the World Wide Web, with the Internet, you were representing the information and reading it in the browser. In these days, you need to have your MIME settings ready to be able to open specific documents, read them via the web. And this continues now in year 2000 in our times, where you have documents, but you have different applications or different access media. You have Office suites on your desktop or wherever. You have web applications to read and access the information and the documents, and you have multiple new applications that need to be able to read the content and that you want to have to be available to read the content of your documents. And this is the important change where we believe that the open document format makes some breakthrough innovation because it offers document content production and enables several applications by using open standards to work with the content, to use it, to read it. So in the move from human to machine interaction, from one person reading, printing out, working with his document, to machine communication and networked businesses, the open document format is a paradigm for progress and for future interchangeability of information and content. In this way, and moving to facilitating innovation, business, and optimization, let us look again at openness and requirements, implications, and trends. I already mentioned in the networked world, it's important that my software is able to talk to your software. We want to eliminate, in order to become more efficient, the man-to-machine interaction. So if somebody sends you a spreadsheet, you get it and you type it into a different application, all the stuff, and then this different application does something with it, and another person sits in front of his desktop, gets the information, needs to copy it, type it into another application. This is all burdensome, and we all love copy and paste in a way, but it would be even better if we were just getting automatically read out the information and get it into the application and into the place where you really need to work with it, where you need to have it. So in this world, it is also ridiculous to think that any one software provider will provide all the pieces in a supply chain, in an IT infrastructure that are needed to work with. We have multiple pieces of software. We heard before in Thomas's speech that it's no longer the case that you have one single stack of IT. You need to be flexible. You want to integrate different pieces of software. You want to scale it. You want to be able to modernize your IT infrastructure anytime. So here, interoperability is key. We need interoperability, meaning that different applications can interoperate with others. And for interoperability, open standards are key. There is no way to achieve interoperability without open standards. I know that some people claim there would be, but the best that you can achieve by this is intraoperability, where you have sort of one big application and others working with this one if they are sort of accepted as someone to read data into this. But this is not free, it's not free choice, it's not true interoperability. Then interfaces to the common services will increasingly start to become standardized, and more experience and after more experience and the development of best practices. This is already a trend, standardization of interfaces. It's increasing, you can see it everywhere, and people need it. Quality of service, security, performance, reliability, availability, all these will become key differentiators rather than sort of having the single building block. And in competition, people offering their software, they will have a great chance on the competitive market by using open standards with these kind of differentiators about quality, about security, performance, to outperform others, and then they will be interchangeably replaced in the stack. No matter which vendor has provided them. And in order to be able to do so, the customers will demand greater interchangeability of such applications. Open standards are furthermore a very important trigger for innovation. It is certainly best for customers, for innovation and growth, if technology providers agree on one single open standard, and if the competition is done on the level of implementations of this standard. The least thing customers want is competing standards. When I arrived here in Bern yesterday, I realized I had forgotten the power, the adapter to fix my German plug into the Swiss things. So, of course, all the available adapters in the hotel were already given away to other people who had forgotten it themselves as well. So what did I do? I went to an electronics store and bought one. But this is what happens when you need adapters. There are people who tell you interoperability can be achieved with adapters and innovation can be done on this way. The truth is, this is painful, this is not innovative, this is old style. Open standards, on the other hand, facilitate interoperability. They prevent single vendor lock-in and are essential for customers to modularly scale their IT infrastructures. And operating on the base of agreed open standards promotes innovation and growth. And the biggest example from the last 10 to 12 years is the World Wide Web. How innovation, growth has been facilitated by the use of open standards. If you think back about 10 or 12 years, you would certainly know, you would probably have heard very often, I would not buy a book over the internet. I would not put my credit card details into an internet application, into a website. You probably did not hear, I bought it on eBay, I Googled it, I looked it up on Wikipedia. And 10 to 12 years ago, you certainly did not hear, I posted it on my new blog. I am now on Facebook. I post my pictures in Flickr. So what has happened here over the last 12 years is a tremendous development, of innovation, of offering of services, of new businesses over the internet. And I will not read this all out to you here, but it's very clear from the pre-web, face-to-face meetings, telephones, encyclopedias. I still have one, sort of 24 books in my shelves. I never use them anymore. I go to Wikipedia most of the time. And then it moved to Web 1.0, HTML standards, using internet, starting e-commerce, buying books by Amazon or BOLD or whatever they are called. Dynamic, but not very interactive web pages. And now we are moving more into Web 2.0, interactive websites, putting content on the web, making it available to others to read it. And the services, the people who offer these services are those who innovate on top of the World Wide Web, of the internet, and who provide their services and who can provide them over the internet because the internet is based on open standards. And here again, interoperability is the vital link. You have web services on the one hand, you have open document formats, you have electronic forms. You want to be able to offer services, use documents, use forms, have them interchangeably available. And this is even more important in the business world as we are moving towards an integrated, networked, global business world. What you see here is on the different levels of a stack, you have services and models that are provided, and the same on the other hand side are required. And to need to link them, and as I mentioned before, we need to move in order to increase efficiency and in order to increase and optimize the supply chain in order to be competitive on the global market. And we in IBM call this in order to move towards a globally integrated company where you work with all your different people and customers around the world all the time and seamless and efficiently and effectively. You need to be able to collaborate. You need to look at cross-organizational business models and business processes. You need to be very flexible in the execution and the composition of services, and you need information interoperability. So it's not only important for big companies, it's also important for small and medium enterprises who are service providers to the big companies. What you see, for instance, is that where you have one big player who dictates the processes for buying and selling things to small and medium enterprises, to partners, they need to look at his way, the way the big player wants the application to be written, wants the process to be designed, and need to meet his requirements. Where they use open standards and work with open standards, small and medium enterprises are a lot more flexible to offer their services to different providers without having to change the process and adapt the process to the specific requirements all the time. Standardized processes, standardized communication and collaboration paths are essential to create and to further increase the competitiveness of both big players and small and medium enterprises in a networked economy and networked enterprise ecosystem. The big buzzword here, of course, is service-oriented architectures. And a lot of what I explained so far is what's being used in service-oriented architectures. Being able to have your applications, your software, talk to other software. Being able to exchange paths in your stack all the time, whenever you like, whenever there's a need. Being able to expand your software stack. So here is an example, and I tried to find some recent web pages for using open standards in the SOA environment. It clearly has improved productivity, increased quality, reduced costs through the use of service-oriented architectures. And service-oriented architectures are only possible where you use open standards. Open standards are essential here as well. Otherwise, you will still have some lock-in. You will still not be able to flexibly exchange and increase your infrastructure. And now for those of you who understand German, who are German-speaking, I'd like to point you at this example, Quo Vadis Bremer. This is a website about the head of the IT company, Panta Ray. He's called Frank Bramer. And in this website, he tells you, he's head of IT, and he tells you his way to realize service-oriented architectures in his company. It's all posted in his blog. Now, don't take this too literally. This is a fake. It's a make-up. It's a website produced by IBM. It's a fictitious person, Frank Bramer, and it's all done by IBM. But it's very good, I believe, and we get very interesting comments. So if you have the time, look at his website, look at the blog. You will find the real world reflected there, how Bramer looks at the current IT infrastructure, wants to replace modules and parts of it in order to service-oriented architectures, how he needs to work with open standards, integrate all kinds of software into the new system, and of course the impacts he makes and the barriers he faces in his company in order to realize his project. So now let me move to the last block in my presentation. I talked so far about open standards, what they are, they relate to open source, what their benefits are, why they are important for enterprises, and how they facilitate innovation, businesses, growth. What does this all lead up to? And what do we see in IBM as sort of the major structure, the new structure, to realize this, to really make this real in our companies? And we call this the open computing paradigm. So if you look at today's economy in the networked world with the World Wide Web, it's collaboration that is key. Collaboration in different areas. Collaboration between companies in the supply chain. Collaboration between external software developers and internal software developers. Collaboration between open source and proprietary development. You have proprietary innovation with some advantages. You have full control in your company, control about which intellectual property that's being generated you want to give out and which you don't, how you want to keep it, how you want to license it, how you want to price it, etc. You have uniqueness and you have some specific focus that you can apply there. You can say, we want to achieve this, so please go and innovate. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, because you can't really innovate when you are told to, and very often I heard a story from a company who had decided that Friday afternoon was Think Day. This was the time when all of their employees were asked not to have any meetings, not to have any phone conferences, but to sit down and think and innovate. Now, do you believe this would work? Probably not. Okay. On the other hand, you have open innovation. And there you have some large advantages. You have communities that are available and ready to contribute. You have a common foundation, and you have the cost advantage that the cost somehow distributes. It's not really low cost. You need to finance it in some way as well. The communities must to finance themselves, but it's a different cost factor than you have here. Now, having one or the other is certainly not the model that will work in the future. You need to have both. But the important task, the important objective is here to find a new equilibrium and to realize the processes in order to make such a kind of collaboration possible in order to allow in your company to do it. One example here how it works is Eclipse, and we will also hear a lot later on about Eclipse, where you start with some proprietary innovation, you make it open, you standardize it, and then you give it out into the community to work with it, to use it, to improve it, etc., etc. So as intellectual property reduces, here the relevance reduces. You make it open, but you gain a lot more than what you lose. And this is important to realize. So collaborative innovation is about a community-driven approach to problem solving. You have people working across geographical and organizational boundaries to confront today's most pressing challenges. Collaborative innovation is enabled by open standards, by new intellectual property practices and by the internet and collaborative tools. It unites perspectives from a host of disciplines to rapidly solve problems, accelerate technological advancements, stimulate economic growth, and enable new business models. And this is how this new equilibrium could look like in a graphic realization. The open computing paradigm, an open ecosystem for innovation, relies on open standards. They are facilitating the exchange of data by integrating different technologies. Open standards promote interoperability by using published open specifications. You have open architecture, increasing collaboration by simply extensible business processes, realizing service-oriented architecture, gaining flexibility, gaining interchangeability, adaptability. And you have innovation on the basis of a common hardware specifications. And eventually you have open source, promoting the innovation by leveraging development expertise of the open source community. What is important in our mind is that the structures are being made to really realize such an open computing environment. Open standards are one of them, collaboration is one of them, making it possible by realizing, by implementing the specific new structures, for instance in the intellectual property area, for instance in open standards area, in order to be able to work in such a way. We in IBM have done it for a while now. We have come a long way to realize it, but we have seen that it is important in the networked world, in networked economies, to come to such a model, and we see that we benefit greatly from it, and we also hear that our partners and the communities benefit from it in a great way. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much, and I believe we've got a couple of more minutes for questions, if there are some.
Jochen, Friedrich, thank you for your presentation. As you mentioned, there is a couple of minutes for questions. Please don't speak until you get the microphone.
No questions?
Do we know questions? Okay, so thank you for your attention.
Yep, thank you very much again.